The biggest secret of the Jews. He who has the ability to save money and achieve victories is wiser than he who only earns. This is an ancient Jewish proverb. And today you will discover why these words are literally worth millions. Stop everything you are doing now, because what I will reveal in the next few minutes could completely change your relationship with money. Half of the 10 richest men in the world, according to Forbes, are Jews. Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Michael Bloomberg, Larry Ellison. Do you really think this is a coincidence? Isn't it? Definitely not. Jews have a philosophy of life that guides them toward wealth, a mindset completely different from most people. While many run from money, fear talking about prosperity, and even glorify poverty, thinking it is a virtue, Jews understand something profound. Dinheiro é uma ferramenta, não inimigo. And the big question is, how do they do it? How has a population of just 14 million people, less than 0.2% of humanity, won 22% of all Nobel Prizes awarded? How do they not only dominate the business world, but also the sciences, arts, philosophy, and global economy? To understand this deeply, you need to look beyond what is on the surface. You need to see the mindset, the culture, the way of thinking that sustains this prosperity. Let me tell you a true story that few Brazilians know. In 1933, when Hitler took power in Germany, there were about 500,000 Jews living in the country. Most of them were merchants, teachers, doctors, small business owners. They were persecuted, had everything confiscated, their businesses stolen, their accounts frozen. Many lost absolutely everything. Those who managed to escape arrived in other countries with nothing but the clothes on their backs. But the remarkable detail is that in less than 20 years, many of these families rebuilt fortunes comparable, and in many cases even greater, than what they had before. How is this possible? Because they did not lose what truly mattered. They did not lose their knowledge. On the internet, you see crazy theories, people talking about secret rituals, absurd conspiracies, shallow prejudices, but none of that has any basis. The truth is that the Jewish secret is not mystical, not hidden, not inaccessible. It is extremely simple, so simple that most people don't believe it. And precisely because it is simple, precisely because it has no glamour, people ignore it. But it works. It has been working for millennia, and it works for anyone who applies it, regardless of religion, background, or financial situation. The first point is this. For Jews, financial education begins in childhood. Not at 30, not at 40, not when life is already a mess and debts have accumulated. It starts early. While many Brazilian parents avoid talking about money with their children, thinking it is a dangerous subject or that it might corrupt the child, Jews do the opposite. They teach financial responsibility from a young age. They study the Torah and Talmud, and these ancient texts contain financial principles so advanced that they would seem modern even today. One of the most impressive examples is in the treatise of Baba Metzia. Rabbi Itzhak teaches that a person should always divide their money into 3 parts. 1/3 in land or something stable that preserves value, 1/3 in businesses that generate active returns, and 1/3 in liquidity, ready for emergencies or opportunities. This is diversification, taught over 15 centuries ago. Meanwhile, many Brazilians put everything into a single thing. They buy a car thinking it's an investment. They put everything in savings, losing to inflation. Or even worse, they spend everything on immediate consumption, a new cell phone, designer clothes, trips just to post photos. So, when an emergency happens, when they break a leg, when they lose their job, when illness arises, they have nothing. And they fall into the repeated phrase 1,000 times, "I'm broke." Jews don't say that, because there is a very deep spiritual, cultural, and psychological principle behind the way they view money. Wealth is not about how much you earn, it's about how much you save. And more than that, wealth is not about appearance, it's about structure. Let me tell you another story. This time about a Brazilian named Roberto. He was 43 years old, earning a decent income, but living in the red-financed car, installment furniture, installment cell phone, credit card always at the limit. Until one day, while talking to a Jewish client, he heard something that completely transformed him. "I don't work to pay bills, I make money work for me." Hearing this, Roberto realized that his entire financial life was based on consumption, status, installments, never on accumulation, never on building. He made tough decisions, sold the car, cut unnecessary expenses, stopped financing trivial things. In 6 months, he saved his first 3,000 reais. In a year, 8,000. 3 years later, he had his own business earning 12 to 15,000 per month and 28,000 invested. The only thing that changed was his mindset. He replaced the Brazilian habit of impulsive consumption with the Jewish habit of disciplined building. But there is another secret that few understand. Jews are not afraid of money. They do not believe that money corrupts. They do not think that being wealthy is dishonest. They do not romanticize poverty. This mindset, very present in Brazilian culture, comes from the Franciscan doctrine that spread the idea that virtue lies in scarcity. In Judaism, it is the opposite. Prosperity is seen as a divine tool, as a responsibility, as a means to do good. The Talmud teaches that wealth does not measure character, integrity does. But it also teaches that prosperity multiplies the good you can do in the world. That is why, for them, money is not taboo. It is a tool. And you see this reflected in behavior. While many Brazilians spend their entire salary on status, appearance, and consumption, Jews invest, reinvest, build, save, and not out of greed, but out of vision, out of wisdom, out of culture. Because they know that living beyond one's means leads to financial slavery, and slavery is the opposite of prosperity. If you now open a piece of paper and write down the 3/3 rule, you will already be taking a step that changes lives. Maybe it will be the first time you organize your finances strategically. Maybe you will finally see why you are broke, because you never applied timeless principles that work in any era, country, or context. And all of this, absolutely everything, is within your reach. Now let's delve into an even more powerful principle that silently determines who prospers and who remains trapped in the cycle of scarcity. Living below one's means. This is one of the strongest foundations of Jewish prosperity, and it has nothing to do with greed, nothing to do with fear, nothing to do with deprivation. It has to do with intelligence, vision, and freedom. True freedom. Jews understand that wealth is not the car you drive, not the neighborhood you live in, not the watch you wear. Wealth is margin. It is the power of choice. It is independence. It is the ability to make decisions without money deciding for you. This philosophy contrasts deeply with what happens in Brazil. Many people live to impress, spend money they don't have, buy what they don't need to show what they are not. And they do this for a simple reason. They want to appear rich. But appearing rich is the fastest and most guaranteed way to stay poor. Being truly rich, on the other hand, is about building infrastructure, assets, reserves, businesses, multiple sources of income. And that requires discipline, focus, and making choices that are not always popular. Let me tell you the story of Mrs. Marta, which illustrates this perfectly. She was 57 years old, working as a hairdresser in Belo Horizonte. She earned between $3,000 and $3,500 a month, enough to live comfortably if she had organization. But she didn't. She loved to buy on installment sofa, TV, cell phone, clothes, gifts. Nothing seemed expensive individually. An $80 installment here, $120 there, $50 somewhere else. But when she added everything up, she realized that more than a third of her income went toward payments for things she mostly no longer used. One day, while talking with a client, Mrs. Raquel Goldstein, she heard something that struck her like an arrow. "Marta, in our tradition, debt is slavery. The first thing you need to do is free yourself." These words changed everything. Mrs. Marta decided to cut unnecessary expenses, cancel what she could, cook more at home, and reorganize her finances. In 8 months, she paid off all her debts. And when that happened, something magical appeared for the first time in decades. She had money left over. She started saving, built a reserve, reinvented the salon, bought better equipment. Today, she earns almost twice what she used to. All of this because she understood the harshest but most liberating truth. It doesn't matter how much you earn. It matters how much you save. And now we move to an even deeper principle: entrepreneurship. For Jewish culture, relying solely on a job is the greatest financial risk possible. Not because a job is something bad, it's not, but because a job means depending on someone else for your survival. And dependence is always risky. The Jews learned this historically. They were expelled, persecuted, forbidden to work in certain fields, forbidden to own land. This forced the community, over the centuries, to develop portable skills: commerce, finance, education, business. The mindset was shaped under pressure, and today, entrepreneurship is almost a natural instinct in many Jewish families. And this also works in Brazil. Let me tell you the story of João from Santos. He was earning 2,400 reais as an administrative assistant, always on the edge, always struggling. One day, he noticed a growing demand in his area: maintenance of computers and cell phones. He knew nothing, absolutely nothing. But he decided to learn. He spent 6 months studying on YouTube, taking free courses, practicing on old devices. He started by helping neighbors, friends, colleagues. Word of mouth grew. In a year, he had more repair requests than he could handle on weekends. So he made the most courageous decision of his life. He quit his job. He opened a small repair shop with 3,500 reais. Today, he has 2 employees, earns between 12,000 and 18,000 reais a month, and is opening a second location. He wasn't born an entrepreneur. He became one, applying timeless principles that never fail. And here comes another fundamental pillar: networking. Jews prosper because they prosper together. The community supports, recommends, drives, buys, and spreads the word. When one starts a business, others show up. When one grows, everyone grows. When one suffers, everyone helps. This unity is a huge competitive advantage. And you don't need to be Jewish to apply this. You can create your own support network. You can connect with people who have similar goals. You can learn from those who are more advanced. You can connect with others who also want to grow. And this leads us to another point: reputation. For Judaism, reputation is worth more than gold. In the Talmud, paying late wages is considered a serious sin. Why? Because it destroys dignity. And dignity to them is sacred. When someone loses trust in you, they lose everything. And without trust, no one prospers. Reputation opens doors. Reputation creates opportunities. Reputation generates wealth. Now, here is one of the most important ideas of this entire narrative. Knowledge is heritage. Much of Jewish prosperity is not in money. It is in the mind. Throughout history, Jews lost lands, houses, businesses, everything. But they never lost knowledge. Knowledge rebuilt them. From generation to generation, whenever something was destroyed, they rebuilt it because they knew how. They knew how to manage. They knew how to negotiate. They knew how to multiply. They knew how to resist. They knew how to start over. And let me show you an example of this. Mr. Isaac, owner of a textile factory in São Paulo, saw his entire company burn down in 2014. One night, 10 years of work turned to ashes. The insurance only covers 40%. Most would give up. He didn't. He had knowledge. He had suppliers, customers, experience, reputation. In 6 months, he was starting again. Today, his company is larger than it was. He rebuilt everything because he had what no one could take away: wisdom. And this leads us to your next practical exercise: investing daily in financial knowledge. 30 minutes a day. That's all. 30 minutes dedicated to learning something that will accompany you for the rest of your life. 10 days of this change your perspective. 100 days change your life. And knowledge, unlike money, can never be confiscated. Now let's move on to another critical point. Reinvestment. Jews know that real wealth does not come from consuming profit. It comes from reinvesting profit. While many Brazilians raise their standard of living as soon as they earn a little more, Jews accelerate reinvestment. They improve the store, buy more stock, hire more people, open another unit. And this cycle, repeated over years, turns small businesses into large assets. Would you like an example? Mr. Samuel, owner of a bakery chain in Curitiba. He started with a small bakery in 2007. First profit, $23,000. He could have spent it all, but he reinvested $17,000. Second year, $41,000. Reinvested almost everything. Third year, $94,000. Reinvested again. Today he owns 7 bakeries, 120 employees, and nearly $1 million in annual profit. Why? Because he understood the fundamental law of prosperity: grow first, spend later. And now we arrive at one of the most beautiful truths of Jewish tradition. Prosperity is spiritual. For Jews, money is not just material. It is also energy, purpose, responsibility. Tzedakah, giving to others, is not charity. It is justice. It is aligning oneself with divine generosity. And curiously, those who give prosper not by magic, but because generosity creates reputation, creates connections, creates opportunities, and creates flow. Ms. Helena from Recife practiced this. She donated 10% of her bakery's profit every month to help community members. What happened? The community started supporting her in return. The business doubled. Generosity returned multiplied, as it always does. Now, we need to talk about one of the most common and most destructive mistakes that 93% of Brazilians make unknowingly: living to impress others, spending money they don't have, on things they don't need, to show something to people who don't even care. This is a silent trap, an invisible prison that destroys wealth, mental health, and financial freedom. Jews don't fall for this. They deeply understand that ostentation is the enemy of true wealth. They know that every time you buy something to impress, you're destroying the foundation you should be building. They live below their means, not above. And that doesn't make them less prosperous. It makes them more. That's what allows them to have reserves, investments, businesses, assets, stability. That's what enables them to withstand crises without collapsing. That's what allows them to grow. And to illustrate this brutal contrast, I will tell you the story of Paulo and Marcelo. 2 friends, same age, same salary, completely different financial realities. Paulo earned 6,500 reais and lived as if he earned 20,000. Financed car, expensive rent in a upscale neighborhood, restaurants, designer clothes, installment trips. At the end of the month, always tight, always in debt, always anxious. Marcelo did the opposite. Bought a cheap, used car outright. Lived in a simpler apartment cooked at home, saved money, invested 2,000 reais per month. After 5 years, the results were shocking. Paulo had debts. Marcelo had 153,000 reais invested, started a side business and bought his first property, not by luck, not by privilege, by mindset. And now it's your turn to do the exercise that transforms lives. List everything you buy to impress: clothes, cell phones, dinners, trips, and calculate the real cost of it. Then imagine this amount invested for 5 years. You will be shocked. But this shock is liberating, because you finally see where you were wasting your future prosperity, and when you change that, your life changes too. Now, let's move on to another essential principle. Mentors. This is one of the greatest strengths of Jewish culture, and one of the biggest weaknesses of Brazilian culture. Jews learn from those who have already walked the path. They listen to elders, rabbis, experienced entrepreneurs. They do not try to reinvent the wheel. They are not offended by advice. They do not think they already know everything. They learn, absorb, apply, grow. Meanwhile, many Brazilians are ashamed to ask for guidance. They confuse humility with weakness. They think that asking for help is a sign of incapacity. And because of that, they spend decades struggling, making mistakes that could have been avoided in 5 minutes of conversation with the right person. I'll give you an inspiring example. The story of Carla from Porto Alegre. She was 26 years old, wanted to start a craft business, but knew nothing about sales, pricing, or suppliers. She could have tried alone, and perhaps failed. But she chose another path. She sought out Dona Rosa, who had a craft store for 35 years. She asked to learn, offered free help in exchange for knowledge, worked with her for 8 months, absorbing everything. Then she started her own business today, She earns between 7 and 9,000 Rs per month, and she saved years of trial and error simply because she had the humility to learn. And now we enter a delicate, yet crucial, point. The truth is that most people will never prosper, not because they are incapable, not because they are unlucky, but because they are not willing to do what is necessary. Everyone wants results. Few want the process. Everyone wants wealth. Few want discipline. Everyone desires financial freedom. Few are willing to give up immediate pleasures. Everyone seeks change. Few accept responsibility. The Jews deeply understand this principle. Wealth is built with consistency, with habits, with vision, with patience, with smart sacrifices. They plant trees whose shade they may never enjoy. They think in generations, not weeks. They build businesses that will outlast them. They educate children to multiply what they have built. And when one generation falls, the next rises. This is the strength of a culture that values the long term above all. And this brings us to the fifth practical exercise, the one that separates those who want to prosper from those who only want to dream. Grab a piece of paper and write, "My action plan for the next 90 days. 3 clear financial goals." Truly, nothing vague. It could be, pay off the credit card, save 1,000 Rs, create an extra income of 300 Rs. Then write 3 immediate actions for each goal. Things you will do this week. Take a photo and set it as your wallpaper. See it every day. Execute. Don't negotiate. Don't delay. 30, 60, 90 days. And then you come back to share what has changed. Now, before I wrap up, I need to tell you something sincerely important. Everything you've heard so far is not theory. It's not empty motivation. It's not pretty speeches. These are principles applied for thousands of years by a people who survived persecutions, wars, expulsions, tragedies, and still prospered not by magic, but by mindset, discipline, education, consistency. They have no hidden secrets, nothing mystical, nothing inaccessible. What they have is culture, a culture that values education, that rewards discipline, that encourages entrepreneurship, that respects the community, that practices generosity, that honors knowledge, that thinks about the future, and that takes full responsibility for their own financial life. And all of this, absolutely everything, is within your reach. If you apply the 10 essential principles we reviewed, diversification, discipline, debt antidote, entrepreneurship, support network, knowledge, reinvestment, generosity, simplicity, and responsibility, your financial life will change, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this month, but inevitably. Mathematics does not fail, discipline does not fail, the accumulated growth does not fail. And to conclude, I want to tell you one last story, one of the most powerful in the Jewish tradition. A poor man sought out a rabbi asking for guidance. The rabbi took him to the window and asked, "What do you see?" The man replied, "I see people on the street." The rabbi then took him to a mirror and asked, "And now?" The man said, "I see myself." The rabbi smiled. Both are made of glass, but the mirror has a thin layer of silver behind it. When you add silver, you stop seeing the world and start seeing only yourself. And that is true poverty. True wealth is not in what you have, but in how much you can give and how well you can see others. So prosper, grow, enrich. But never stop seeing people, never stop helping, never stop teaching, never stop serving, because at the end of life, the only wealth we carry is the impact we leave on others. Now go there and apply. Truly, I believe in you, and see you in the next chapter of this journey of prosperity.